Podcast. I'm your host, Dee Kei, and today with me we have a special guest. If you've been listening to the exclusive episodes, then you know who this guy is. This is James Parrish, but he goes by James Dean. James, welcome to the show.
What's up? I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, you're going to want to scoot up right up on that, like kiss that mic. Hello, James, this is literally. We are live right now on Twitch and on YouTube. So if you want to judge the way we look, come do so by subscribing on YouTube. Yeah. James is currently transitioning to be the new host of the exclusive episodes of the podcast and swapping out with Braden. Braden is, well, he told me he's going to be starting school, but we'll see if he actually does that.
Yeah, we don't trust him that much.
And Braden, so James will be taking over the exclusive episode, and today Lou is feeling a little sick under the weather. So I asked James to come join me on this episode for this special edition episode with James Dean. We're going to talk about 5 misconceptions. So maybe something along the lines of 5 reasons why your mixes suck. Those sort of titles, clickbaity titles, always do really well. I don't know why. But these are more like misconceptions, things that intermediate, even advanced, or especially beginner engineers, there's a lot more nuance to this stuff than people give credit. And we're going to talk about 5 different things that may be keeping you from doing your best work. And these are things that we all have to learn one way or another. I don't think these are hyper crazy. I think some of them are interesting and some of them might change your perspective a little bit. I think one of them specifically is going to not piss people off, but it's going to be the exact opposite of what you've probably been learning your entire life. And I'm really, really passionate about it. So we're going to talk about that, but we're going to start off really easy. Number 1, first misconception of mixing is being afraid to do too much. Now, I do think that people often do too much. Like that is something that does happen.
Yeah.
And then there's like a level that you get to where you're starting to get good. And then all of a sudden in the intermediate phase, I feel like people start to kind of turn into being afraid to do too much.
Yeah.
When did you find yourself in that position, James?
I think it's easy to get into that because we hear the phrase overprocessed a lot. Like, oh, that sounds overprocessed. And I didn't realize I was in a way doing too little. Because it was that pendulum. I used to do too much and then I started doing too little. And then the first time it came here and sat in a mix that you did, I noticed, I think you're doing it was a home recorded vocal and it was super harsh. And I noticed that you had a bunch, probably 5 dynamic EQ, spots, all on one vocal in one spot. And my instinct was at first man, he's doing way too much. But then you were A-B'ing it for me and I was like, oh no, that just sounds a lot better. And so I noticed that since then I've, how do I put it? I've kind of relied on my ear a little more after that to be all okay, this still doesn't sound okay. I'm okay to do another EQ band if it makes it sound better. That makes sense? Yeah.
Also, while you were talking, I realized this is the first time everybody's meeting you. I didn't properly introduce you. Because I'm we've done a bunch of episodes together already on the exclusive. James is a mixer, just moved out here to LA, longtime listener of the pod. Is a good mixer. It's a great mixer.
Oh.
Shitty human being. No, I'm just kidding. It's a great human being. And I think has a lot of valuable insight as well. Currently works with us at In the Mix Studios. Sorry, I should have said that before we started. I just kind of glossed over it. Yeah. Everybody's like, who the fuck is James?
Yeah, that's me.
I still don't know. Who the fuck is James? I don't know. But anyway, we're I think that's a really good point. You've seen me mix, and
yeah.
Granted, I will say that still, even now, there's many times where I do too much, and then I have to dial it back. I don't know if you've seen me do that yet, but there's moments from time to time where I have a bunch of things going on. For example, in an EQ, specifically an EQ, where I have way too much going on. And then I'll have a sudden backtrack and be like, you know what, this is way too much. I think I can do all of this with a single band rather than with 3 bands, you know?
Yeah.
Like I don't need to boost just this shelf here or just this bell here. I can do a shelf, and like or whatever, or do the similar ideas but with different slopes and shapes with less moves.
Yeah, I think it could be kind of easy to like almost trick yourself out of not listening to your ears. Like I don't know if you've experienced that before, but like you would like look and like be like, oh I don't have enough plugins on here, and you almost feel like you have to do it, or you might have too many. But like I think it could be easy, like tempting to like feel like, oh, I can't do another move because it might ruin it.
I will be totally honest here, and I'm not trying to like flex or anything like that, but good. Like I'm at a point right now, and I think this is like a point that everybody should strive to be at, where I'm genuinely not thinking about how many plugins I'm using or not using.
Yeah.
I have an end goal sound in mind.
Yeah.
And if it takes up 10 inserts, it takes up 10 inserts, and I don't even think about whether or not I should feel bad about it. Now, I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody because of that. I'm just saying that, like, I think what you should strive for, like, the level beyond this misconception, right? So, like, sometimes you're afraid to do too much, sometimes you're afraid to do too little, but I think the point of this is the ideal, and I hate to use myself as a good example here, but the ideal is, like, if you're a good mixer and you trust your ears and you've proven to yourself for years that you know what the heck you're doing, then I don't think how much or how little you do is even a thought that you have. It's rather just the end goal in mind.
It sounds good, and that's kind of what matters. Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, when I'm like EQing and stuff or whatever, I'm also like, I have an end goal in mind, but I'm also oftentimes experimenting what the best way to get there is. Yeah. So like I might add points on an EQ, I might compress with a different compressor, but you've also seen me just like totally remove the plugin and be like, oh, that's not working at all.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, no, not that. Yeah, exactly. I've seen like even like Jesse Ernster, like I've seen him, he would still experiment too. So it's okay to sometimes not know exactly what it needs and experiment, but make sure you like A, B, and see what's actually better.
Yeah, and the form of experimenting is different, because I feel like in a beginner, experimentation is more based on how can this sound better.
Yeah.
Where like when more experienced mixers are experimenting, they already know what sounds better, what they want. I want more punch, I want more thickness. Yeah. But they're just experimenting how to properly get there that's best for this source. Right? Yeah. So the experimentation is different. But I do think that I think you do have to go through the valley of overthinking before you get past the point where it's like, it's just total flow state.
Yeah. No, yeah, I get that. It's a matter of like being more comfortable and confident, but it's hard to get there.
I don't know about you, James, but for me, I think getting through the valley of overthinking, right? That's a good way of putting it. But getting through that, I think it's just 100% practice. Like, it's just the time. Yeah. Maybe like, I mean, from proving to yourself through like clients approving hundreds, if not thousands of your songs over the years. Yeah. Knowing that you're the shit, getting paid enough, I think that making enough money kind of reflects how you feel about yourself too. Yeah. There's like a lot of different things, but I do feel like that just comes with time. Yeah. And I think people are too impatient.
No, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. It's easy to get frustrated. Yeah, like it wasn't until like very, very recently that I started feeling like that. When you gave me that like first bit of mix revision for the group that we do. And we do like a little mixed feedback group.
Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah. We do a mixed feedback group at the studio. Pretty much anyone there will Dee Kei will give us stems to do a practice mix every week, and we'll get together and get feedback. It's been great. If you could find a way to get a group of mixers together wherever you're at, it's
hold on. Do not start contacting me to ask me if you can join this group. I'm not doing it for y'all. Yeah. It's only for people that are basically assisting me. Yeah. In that sense.
Yeah, no, this is not open to everyone. As much as we love you guys, it's not that.
It's like James and one other person. Like, that's it.
But it is super helpful to find a group, though. But what helped me with that was really when you heard the one mix I did, and you're like, oh, like, this is really good. Like, this would be a perfect mix one. For some reason, just getting that, like, external validation from a mixer I respect, as a mixer, not as a person, then
What the fuck are you trying to say, James?
I'm kidding. I respect Dee Kei as a person too. But for some reason, since then, it's helped me to not really second guess as much the moves I make. So yeah, I guess, but that also does come from like time of working and getting to the point that like the mixes are good enough for you to say that. Yeah.
I mean, I had the same thing. I do think the validation does come over time. I think it's sad that we need it, but I mean, I'd be silly if I said that you don't need validation, because even I started the podcast, started taking my craft a lot more seriously when Leslie Brathwaite validated me.
Yeah.
Right. So there's like a point in time where someone that I respect validated me. And I think that happens to a lot of people eventually. Like if you just keep working at it, like keeping your, like keep working, keeping your head down, just staying focused on the craft. And then someday you're going to get a form of validation. I mean, like Braden talks about his form of validation is when he beat a mastering shootout. And like, that was the moment for him. I mean, we all have egos that we need to get over. And I think that, through time, eventually there's going to be a moment where you'll be like, oh yeah, I am the shit. And I'm allowed to think that. I think there's like a level, this is unrelated, this tangent, classic tangent here. But like, I think you need a lot of humility to get better. And then there's a point where it takes a certain amount of humility to realize that you might be good.
Yeah.
Because there's like a point where it's like, if you're really good and you still think you're shit, there's like a secondary unspoken commentary of saying that you think that everybody else is shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay,
sense.
what about anybody else that's not as good, that's working hard?
Yeah.
It's like, are you saying that we're even worse?
Exactly.
Because you think you're shit, so it's like, it's okay and borderline healthy and practical to think that you are good. Not just for the sake of yourself, but for the motivation of those around you as well. Anyway.
Yeah, I think the word is meekness. Do you know that word? Meekness?
Define meekness.
My understanding of the word is, the best way I heard it explained is power, but with precision. So like a big attribute of meekness is being humble enough to know that you could grow and improve, but also recognizing your strengths and powers and being proud of them.
Dude, I looked up what is meekness in the dictionary on Google, and it says the fact or condition of being meek. Thanks.
There you guys go. Meekness is being meek.
Submissive. Submissive. Interesting.
But okay, so that could go into, though, I guess it's more of a tangent too. Part of that submissiveness is being able and understanding to be able to learn from anyone. So not only people that you see above you, but like from people who are new to or people who are younger, you are open to learning from them as well.
Cool. I'm also just cool to like come up with a brand new definition of meek too.
Yeah. But yeah, anyways, that's at least what I think about it, is like it's not being prideful to be like I'm good at what I do. I think it's being meek, of being like I'm good and I have something to offer people.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I do. It takes a certain amount of meekness or humility to recognize that you're good.
Yeah.
Accept the compliments. Okay. Number 2 is, this is an easy one, low-hanging fruit here. Compression does not equal punch. Now, I don't know why, but there's a lot of people that think or like default put on compression on drums or whatever because they want the drums to be punchier or to be thicker or something like that. There is something to be said about how density, specifically saturation, can create like density, but that's not punch necessarily. And I do feel like I've seen far too often people naturally just gravitate to opening up a compression plugin or using a compressor of some kind, almost by like default. By default, and they're like, not even listening for it. I understand that compression is difficult to listen for, but I also think that if you want to get better, you have to take the mental effort to bypass it, to really experiment with it a little bit each and every time, and fully confirm that you like the way it sounds.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's, I'm trying to think. For me, I guess talking about punch usually means drums and stuff. I tend to default to like the rubber band compressor that Jesse Ray has.
I like that one a lot.
Yeah. But sometimes I'll like really get into it and dial it in and be like, oh, this sounds so cool, so loud. But then after A-Bing, I'll realize, oh, this kind of lost its like thumb. And so I think I think, yeah. It doesn't always mean that like it'll make it punchier. So it's good to just make sure you test and compare, and it could be something else that's causing the drums to not sound as good.
Yeah, and I think it's partially like attack and release times, obviously. So fast release times is more sustained, slow release time, less sustained. So if you got a snare and it's only happening every quarter note or every like half note, right? Anyway, and then and there's like a hi-hat bleed in it, like slow down the release and then you'll get less hi-hat.
Yeah.
But you'll also get less sustain in the snare. So and then if you have like a slow attack time, you get more of that initial transient, like 30 millisecond and above, you get more of that transient. But sometimes the punch that you want is not an increase in initial transient. Sometimes the punch is an EQ thing. Like you want more lower mids. I feel like the body of a snare, the body of a guitar, like that. Sometimes it's like low mids is where punchiness is. So it's a frequency thing. It's not necessarily an amplitude dynamic thing. I think people just necessarily like kind of like default to compression. And I think compression is a super dope tool. And I think that it's just difficult to understand, difficult to hear. So people just put it on without thinking, and you're never going to learn how to hear compression if you just keep putting it on without thinking.
Yeah, a practice that I've done that you guys could try out. I think you said you don't do this. I don't remember. When I was trying to better understand what different compressors were doing, is to set like the output gain so that it's technically dB wise the same level before and after compression, so that you're really just only hearing what the compression's doing. And so I think kind of doing that has helped me to better understand, okay, this is what's actually happening, other than like the compressor plugin itself just making it louder.
Yeah. No, I do that all the time. In fact, very rarely do I use compression for gain staging. Sometimes I do that, actually. You've seen me do that too. Where like I turn up or down the volume. That's like super important. But there's a difference between like RMS versus like peak value.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about as well. But make sure that you have like, when you're bypassing plugins, make sure that it's similar volume and not to fool yourself there. So that's another thing too. It's like, it's not necessarily over compression. It's not necessarily under compression, but like, I think number 2 is more about using a compressor, like using a square key for a circular hole.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
So it's like sometimes it's not the right tool, and I think that people need to be open to the idea that it's not working. And I think if you want to understand compression, you have to be open to the idea that this isn't helping you achieve your results.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3. This is the one that I think may surprise some people. And this is top of mind because we've been talking about it for the last week. But James taught the intern lesson last week. Was it this last week? At the studio, we have lessons for all the interns every Wednesday. James taught and basically did like a full-on read the manual for the FabFilter Pro Q3.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about what it says there. But this is specifically about linear phase mode or linear phase EQ. And we'll generalize as well, go a little macro into like anything that's CPU intensive. Linear phase EQ is not better, does not sound better, is actually worse, and is hurting your audio more than it is helping you in 99.9% of all scenarios. The manual in FabFilter even says the same thing.
Yeah, I was reading the manual and it even like specifically said like I don't remember word for word, but it's just to make sure you know linear phase is not better. It's just necessary for certain aspects. So 99% of things that you have to do will sound okay in natural phase. And like pretty much 90% of things you have to do will sound perfect in zero latency mode.
Yeah. So even zero latency mode is potential in Pro Q3 is better than linear phase. Okay, so a couple things with linear phase is one, this is like extreme and it's very subtle. So I'm not going to say that this is like going to be make or break, but this is just unnecessary and like an example of why it's inferior in most situations. Linear phase, because EQ is a phase tool, you're shifting phase. Linear phase will try to maintain similar phase. So thus, if you have things that are especially slow, like low end, where the wave waves are wider, in order to keep the same phase, it's got to stretch time and stretch out the sine wave. Okay. Now, what happens is that if you have a really tight cue and you boost super high amounts of gain, so it's like, and you have in Pro Q3, if you put it on the maximum level, it creates what's called pre-ringing, something that doesn't happen with any sort of natural phase EQ. Pre-ringing, look up on YouTube, just type in clear examples of pre-ringing, and you'll hear it. It's like if you boost on a natural phase EQ, it'll be like poof, poof, like regular punchy. But if you hear pre-ringing, it'll be whoopoo, 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 and it like totally destroys the transient. Now that is an extreme case, and that doesn't happen all the time unless you do extreme tight cues with extreme boosting. But that's just something that you could totally avoid and do 4 times less processing on your PC if you just didn't use linear phase at all. So you're using your computer more, unnecessary CPU processing, and potential pre-ringing issues. And on top of that, the only pro. Do you want to talk about the only pro linear EQ might have in some scenarios?
So they gave an example in the manual, and it's I don't even fully understand what the example was, but it's pretty much like there's 2 instruments and they have like a very similar frequency spectrum. And if with using the natural phase or zero latency, you make an adjustment and it creates phase issues, you would use it for that. But it was like a very specific thing. So like, I guess it's good to know when to use it, but don't just use it because it's the most CPU intensive, and that makes it seem like it's doing more.
There's also interesting too, because I'm going to introduce the idea that phase is not up or down. Like there's degrees of phase, like 0 to 180. And so you can have like 73 degrees off phase, so it's like, just because you flip the phase doesn't mean it's perfectly in phase. It just means that it's a little bit less out of phase.
Yeah.
So it could still be in between. So we're going to get that out of the way, that concept out of the way first.
Yeah.
For example, full drum kit. Let's say on the way in, miraculously, you got 100% perfect correlated phase shifting. You took maybe you did the editing and you got it perfectly in phase. Mm-hmm. And like, you do not want it even a single degree out of phase anymore. Okay, you might start using linear phase EQ for a single one of those mics.
Yeah.
If you've done the editing and done. But here's the thing, if everything is slightly out of phase, even if you flip the phase, right?
Yeah.
Like it's infinite between 0 and 180 degrees, right? So if you flip it, okay, you flip all the phase, you check all the phasing, the phase is good, maybe you've done some editing, whatever. Even if you use natural phase and things that go slightly out of phase, like it's probably not going to hurt it that much, or depending.
Yeah.
And if it does hurt it that much, you just flip the phase again on that single. So it's just like, it solves a problem that has rarely ever been a problem, and then rarely ever is a problem. This is a huge misconception. Linear phase specifically for mastering.
Ooh,
or for drum buses.
Yeah, they've even said in the manual they've advised against using it on drums because they said it will kind of suck the dynamics out of it.
Boom.
So that's
Okay, so if you are a TikTok audio listener, and you've been told linear phase on Fab Filter Pro Q3 is the sauce. This is the secret. First off,
this is the secret to get Grammy vocals, and then it's just like some crazy EQ cut.
Yeah, no. First off, you quit being so susceptible to marketing. Like, please be independent. Like, have your own thoughts. Okay, that's a clear example that in that moment you were a follower, because I guarantee that if you went back and forth and tested whether or not linear phase versus natural phase was better, you would have not noticed a difference. If you were actually honest, you would have been like, oh my gosh, there's no fucking difference. Okay, that's the first step. Number 2, it's not even close to true. It's not even a little bit true. It's not even a little bit true.
Yeah.
So avoid it at all costs. So that is a huge misconception. I don't know where that started. I mean, this is like just Google, is linear phase EQ better? There's mastering engineers have huge forums where they're like, no. Or like, it's like this really weird thing. It's like, it's just in general, avoid it.
Yeah.
Number 4 is the importance of the rough. I want you to share your stories about like the feedback things, and like,
oh yeah,
because like most of the time, because first off, with the feedback group, the mix feedback group that we're doing, I'm not responding as DK the mixer. I'm trying to do my best to give feedback based on if I was the client.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There are a few instances. A huge thing that's, I think, amongst everyone in the group, and the main feedback that we get is like, you did this too different from the rough or something like that.
That is a very common theme.
Yeah. And especially for things like, how to describe it, like those random instruments that come in for just a verse or just a chorus, and like you don't know how in the mix they want it. I feel like the reference mix is a good indicator of how present they want that instrument to be. But I think the best example of this that happened in our feedback group is there's like one, it was like a digicore song that you had us do. And I did a mix, and it was essentially came down to like you wanted to get louder and you want to match the genre. And DK even told me that as an engineer and like from his personal taste, he likes my mix a lot more. But what the customer would have wanted, or what the artist would have wanted, and how the genre sounds itself, it would not have sounded good in that genre. It did not match the genre that well. And the artist's taste. And the artist's taste, yeah. And so in that sense, I strayed away from, even though I think a lot of people would think that it's better, it's not what fits inside the artist's taste. And the artists themselves probably would not have liked that as a mix one.
So this is interesting. This is like the idea that like at the end of the day, mixes are super subjective. And this is why communicating with a client is almost more important than the ability to mix, because your ability to mix is mostly, like, honestly speaking, there's a part of mixing. The craft of mixing is like, how well can you be a chameleon? Like, think about if Manny Marroquin, who mixes for, let's say, Post Malone. He mixes for Post Malone. And recently he did like the Kendrick album. Let's say he started mixing both of those like he mixes John Mayer.
Yeah.
Because he really, really likes the way John Mayer sounds like.
Just super clean, and that would
just
not
really
that would
dark,
not match.
Really dark.
Yeah.
Really like low volume, low, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, no, that doesn't work. A good mixer, like if the mix is good, nobody's thinking about what the mixer did.
Yeah.
Like, even like an engineer, like if the mix is good, even an engineer who's listening to the song won't think about who mixed the song.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, that also reminded me of like, there's this band I was mixing for, and they kind of did more folky kind of music. And I had a version of the vocals that I thought sounded so much better than what they wanted. And I almost tried to, because I had two different versions of the vocals and stuff, and they wanted the other one, and I kept on trying to kind of put elements of the vocal that I liked more of that way of mixing it into the one that they wanted, and they kept on sending it back for revisions. And so like, it's almost like my ego and what I thought made it sound better, all that did was make the process longer instead of just listening to them and what they wanted. It's their song at the end of the day.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, and that's a big deal. And at the end, so here's the thing. I want to redefine that conversation. At the end of the day, this is reality, and this is how you should be thinking about this as a mixer. I personally, as the teacher, as DK, thought that your mix was good, but it was in the wrong direction, which means it was bad.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? So it's like, that is like the part of mixing, like mixing, being a good mixer, having a clean mix, that ability to mix is only a very small portion. And that ability means nothing if you're unable to be a chameleon. Like, if you're unable to change the style of mixing, what is best for the client, what is best for the genre, and understanding, like, as a mixer, it's our job to be like analyzers of music, and to honestly customer service again, like just to provide that service. It's not like a product that you just pick out beforehand.
Yeah,
you may have a little bit of taste, but like, honestly, like, your sound, the sound that you might have is partially, this is so weird to say, I'm like testing out this idea. If you have a sound as a mixer, that's just a byproduct of your inability to mix.
Interesting.
So like you have a sound because you're unable to conform 100%, nor should you conform 100%. But like if you were a perfectly great chameleon mixer, like what is Serban Ganea's sound? To not touch the fucking mix. That's his sound. Like he doesn't, like he's got a clean thing, but like every single one of his mixes sounds so different. Like what is Manny Marroquin's sound?
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, it's good.
That's all.
That's all it is. It's like,
yeah.
And for me, like my sound is typically like louder with like more aggressive drums. But that's like, I feel like that sound, like, which it can be a good thing, especially if you know what you're getting out of, is also my weakness.
Yeah. I think what can make you good is you could have your sound, but then you have to be humble enough to be willing to let that go if it's what they want. I remember Jesse Ray Ernster like posted this mix and he was like, oh, the perfect mix doesn't exist. Oh wait, it's this one, like saying it was the perfect mix. And I was driving with Ashley, my wife, and I was like, oh, I want to listen to this. So I played it. She was like, what's this? I was like, oh, apparently it's like the perfect mix. And she was like, well, isn't the perfect mix just like what the artist wants? And so like
Ashley's his wife, by the way.
Yeah, that's my wife. Yeah. I don't know, that like when she said that kind of put perspective in my head. I was like, I guess that technically is like,
yeah, I assumed that Jesse was being sarcastic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, and I bet it was an amazing mix and stuff like that. But I don't know, yeah, I think it's something to like think of like, in a sense, the perfect mix is just what the artist wants themselves.
Of course. And this goes into like the reason why I'm mixing practice stems doesn't work is because you can get better at the craft of mixing, but you're mixing into a void. Like without a customer. So this is why the value of free work is always better than practice stems, because you have someone that's putting the pressure on and is approving your project. You have someone, which is most of mixing. Like the ability to manipulate audio to do whatever you want it to do is only a part of the craft. The real craft of mixing is using that skill to do whatever the client wants.
Yeah.
So in that case, like I don't know, there's this like weird misconception that it's just like, can you make audio do what you want to do, and like that's the most important skill. No, it's the most important skill is actually communicating and understand what the client wants and stepping in the same direction that the artists want to step in. I will say though that from my personal experience, the less you charge, the more the less experience that you have. I don't want to say lower quality, but like that's not the right word, because there's some really high quality stuff out there that on like a very local level. Is
it like they don't know what they want kind of thing?
That's think been my experience. The less experienced people are, the more they're gonna push you, and like okay, I'm just gonna say it like this: the higher up you go with mixing, the more experience you get, the more important projects you get, the bigger clients you get, the more money that you make. They want you to do less and less. It's like the most counterintuitive thing ever. Yeah. Because if they have the budget to hire a more expensive mixer, that means they have the budget to hire or participate with like better songwriters, better producers who are a lot more thoughtful with their arrangement and mixing before you even get it. And so by the time you even get it, it's not even demoitis. It's that the fact is it already sounds fucking great before you even touch it as a mixer. So it's like now they just want that approval. Yeah. I mean, this is something that specific to, I think I brought up like talking about Serban Ganea, right? Who, by the way, is like the number one. He's like kind of secretive. He doesn't really go out in public or do like mix with the masters or anything like that. He's not present on
social media.
Yeah, but he's like the number one mixer in the world as far as like just like data goes, like how many Billboard number ones he has. And I've had the opportunity to listen to before and afters of his mix, the rough mix and the mix afterwards, and it's like surprising. It's surprising how little it was different. Yeah. It was like, I think it's slightly tighter, maybe.
Yeah, that's crazy. That just kind of shows he just has a very good ear to make those very minute changes.
Yeah. And has a great understanding, like, and honors, I like to use the word honor, honors the work of the producer and the work that was put in before.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something you said in our group too. Like you said, it's like, it's almost like a compliment to them when you say like, hey, I actually didn't have to do too much. Like it sounded good.
It's really counterintuitive because you feel like if you're getting paid so much, or if you have this much pressure, you have to do more. Yeah. But nah. Like the best compliment is to honor them by saying, no, this is great. And I did very little. Actually, a specific example is I had a producer friend of mine, Gavin, who's stupid good producer.
He's way good.
He's really good. I love anything he sends over to me. There's this one artist that he sent over a band of dudes, and the artists themselves are like, I can't hear a difference. And Gavin's like, no, it's definitely tighter.
Interesting.
He's like, this is definitely better. And like, he was really happy with that.
Yeah.
And that was enough to win him over, to win the artist over.
Yeah.
And he felt really respected.
Yeah.
From the conversation that we had, if I remember correctly. So it's I mean, that's the problem that I have with mastering engineers. Like I've had way too many issues with underexperienced mastering engineers.
Yeah.
That don't understand that, like, we do things on mixers and producers, the people before us, and even up to me, like the artist approved.
Yeah.
Like things were done on purpose. And that's why I hate mastering engineers that do too much.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you're dishonoring the entire process up until this point.
Yeah. I think even Andrew Shepard, he said like it happens a decent amount where he'll just get the mix and all that he does is just turn it up to the, like the limit of the threshold, and that's it. Like people trust his ears enough where he's like, oh no, that's good. You're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's number 4 is ignoring the rough and the dangers of ignoring the rough. I think the rough is a great reference. And like, I do that trick all the time, what you were talking about earlier, like using the rough, listening to the rough to figure out what the role of each track was.
Yeah.
Like how loud is that shaker in the background?
Yeah.
Is this supposed to be a subtle thing in the background that's just adding some noise? Or is it like main forefront track?
Yeah.
You don't know without the rough.
Yeah. Yeah. The rough is good. Amen to the rough.
Yeah. I mean, think about this. Like you're a guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
You've written music.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that you wrote a song with your wife and you asked me to mix it. And even if you're like, I don't like the way it sounds right now.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have sent it to me unless you got it to a point where you're like okay with it. Like,
yeah.
You wouldn't have sent it to me if you weren't at least vibing with it.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. But then I would be pissed if like I really liked a certain guitar part in it. And like even in the reference, I intentionally had it turned up. And then you had it like in the background and not even because you thought it filled the space better. I would have been pissed if that happened too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. So that's something to think about. Jason Joshua, who's famous for saying, fuck your rough mix. There's a clip in Mix with the Masters on their YouTube channel of actually me asking Jason Joshua what he meant by that. And Jason actually specifically said, yeah, I say that, but that's basically just a marketing ploy because I actually respect the rough a lot. And that's like really important. You have to respect the rough. That's literally his answer. So,
yeah, that's pretty much what he said. Yeah.
He didn't say the marketing thing, but that's, I'm interpreting it as that. And then I think like if you do too much, that's like the job of a producer. If you are a producer, then it is within your right to change the song completely as much or as little as you want. But if you are a purebred mixer, like you're just mixing the song, don't fucking touch it too much.
Yeah.
Be careful. Be very, very careful.
Yeah. And if you do change things, communicate it. Mm-hmm. Like that's a big thing.
Actually, I don't know why we're bringing up Jesse so much on this episode. You've brought him up already 3 times. But this is something that Jesse and I have talked about in the past, but like we do this thing where okay, 2 points to this. If I do too much or I want to take a different creative direction, I send them 2 mixes. I send them one that's more normal, that's more like the rough. Mm-hmm. And then I send another that's like, but here's what I like to see if they like it. So I give them 2 options. And then the point number 2 is rarely ever does it ever help to even send the creative one. The one that I think is better.
Interesting.
And never have they ever, like rarely ever have they ever accepted it. It's like a big risk. And on top of that, like, it's like, in fact, it's backfired for both of us. It's backfired a couple times where it's like, I sent them a version that I thought was better, which basically tells them that I don't believe in your version.
Oh, that makes sense.
So it's just like, so they lose trust in us as a mixer.
Yeah. And one more thing I just remembered too. I know we've been on this point for a while, but like, I remember one of the mixes I watched you do, the reference had that little moment where the drums cut. Remember that? Like the do, 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 do. But in the stems you got, it wasn't that. And it wasn't until you were checking back and forth on that specific part that you realized, oh man, like that probably could have been bad if you just completely missed that whole little drum chop, because it's a pretty like important beat on the song.
Yeah, that's true. In that song, there was like a bunch of different chops that was important. I think with the mixing group too, like there's one song where like I didn't do this on purpose, but it was a great learning point. The intro in the rough was different. Like it was like copy and pasted for something else, or like tracks were muted, but the rough was different than the stems. And not a single person in the group brought back a mix with the same intro as the rough.
Yeah,
that's an instant fail. That was an instant fail.
Shame from Daddy D.
Like that shouldn't be an issue, but that's an example of like not paying attention to the rough.
Yeah.
Like if you had noticed the rough, and that was like a scenario where like if everybody had listened to the rough like and A-B back and forth enough, like it would have been really easy to duplicate it. Like it wouldn't have been difficult or tedious. It would have just been like muting something or changing something a little bit. I don't remember the exact specific details, but that's like an example of not paying attention to the rough.
I think it was like there were like weird song chops in the beginning that I guess they took out. But yeah, it was something like that.
Oh, so they just like deleted the intro or something like that.
It was something, but like it was still in the stems. But yeah, if we listened, it wouldn't have been in there.
Yeah. So like that, yeah, with the mixing group, it's all the same in the sense that you have to pay attention, and that's like the most important thing. Respect the rough. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 5. What does it say?
I was trying to read it just barely. I forgot. I was trying to read your handwriting.
It's okay to. Oh. Okay. This is actually a hot topic. I think this is really important. This is more within the lines of like music within the realm of pop. So whether it's hip hop, whether it's with country, or whether it's folk, if you're trying to make a record that is not avant-garde, but more, if you're trying to make music that is widely accepted to large audiences, that is not music for a specific niche or a specific thing, almost every single time, I do not believe that a good mix, you have to perfect anything. In fact, like perfection is something that you do not want to seek, except for this one thing that I'm gonna purposefully kind of exaggerate my stance on this just to prove the point. Vocal tuning. If vocal tuning isn't perfect every single song, it's not even fucking worth putting out. If you do not have the ear to be able to know when notes in a run or a specific small note, even if it's like a 16th note, is off, hire someone to tune your vocals, because it does not take an engineer. It does not take a producer. It does not even take a singer. My tone deaf Down syndrome kid can tell if you are a bad singer. Okay. And it ruins the song. Imagine a guitar solo, but the strings are off, and the guitar solo is actually the entire song, but like the tuning is off. It doesn't take an experienced musician to know that this sounds cheap and it sounds like you didn't put in the effort. Most of the time, it's like you need to have the patience to, if you're working with the artist or the singer or the rapper even, to do enough takes and to have a good ear to recognize when to do another one, have a good relationship and humility where it's like you're comfortable saying that wasn't good enough, right? Which most of the time artists do appreciate if you're tracking. Or taking the time to edit afterwards and fix it in post, which is Melodyne is like a really useful tool. What I'm not saying is to make it sound robotic. You can perfect vocal tuning, and it doesn't have to be each note doesn't have to be perfectly centered, but it damn near needs to be close, or else it's distracting. And I hear way too many amateur mixes where it's fucking ruined by a singer that just not willing to put in the time to redo it, or to edit the vocals to be in tune. Yeah. It's like the most easiest way to destroy any chance on the popularity of a song.
I think that even if you are going for the natural sound, if you're practiced enough in like Melodyne, you could still tune it with it sounding natural. It doesn't have to sound.
You could
robotic.
do it with auto-tune.
Yeah.
In fact, auto-tune doesn't work if you're a bad singer. So.
Yeah. I remember. I think it was literally like a few days ago. There was a mix I was working on, and you told me that like with that artist, what will help their mixes so much is just going through and pitch correcting everything. And so I went in and did that, and it made the mix so much better.
Literally, it's not even an EQ compression thing. It was literally just tuning the vocals.
That's like, I'm pretty sure that's all I changed. And then it sounded so much better after that. So yeah, sometimes an out of tune vocal, even though we want to sound natural, it could take you out of the song.
I swear on my life, if you leave a vocal one note out of tune just because it sounds more under the guise of more natural, you are the most amateur piece of shit I know. Like, I know that's like a really extreme, and I'm generalizing and exaggerating to prove a point. The shock factor. But I want you to be that serious about it. Like, it really ruins songs. Again, it's the most important, like with most songs that have singing on it, it's the loudest and most important feature. Again, it's like a guitar solo, but throughout the entire song, and guitar solos don't have words that you understand that emotionally connect with people. You're not letting the song even get an opportunity to connect emotionally to the person. If it's not in tune, get it in fucking tune. And it's literally an effort thing. And if it's an ability thing, like you're unable to hear it or unable to do it, it's really cheap to hire a vocal tuning person. Yeah. I can give you someone that can vocal tune for affordable amount. I can DM me if you need someone like that.
Yeah.
I am so sick and tired of hearing great songs, great mixes, great productions being ruined by a lazy ass vocal.
Yeah.
Lazy ass vocal.
I feel like even if it's just the first few words that are out of tune and the rest is in, that's like you're already taken out of the song.
Oof. It is so lazy. It's so, and I'm using lazy on purpose because it's most of the time not an ability thing. We have the tools to fix them, whether it's previously or in post.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that ruins a song. And dude, it's the difference between having a record that sounds local and cheap and having a record that's like competitive with Beyonce. It's a lot of the times it's just tuning.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. There's an artist that I've mixed for, and he was very much like, I don't want the vocal tuned. And I kept on trying to like secretly do it, and he just did not want it. And at the end, like, I was like, this is a good song. I still mixed and stuff, but like, I just remember like leaving that project, like it would have sounded so much better if it was in tune. It was a good song.
I will say though, in the last 4 or 5 years of my mixing, ever since I like stepped it up, and doing mixing at a higher level.
Yeah.
Not a single person has asked me to not do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
In fact, I've had other comments like, hey, can you tune this one actually? That's pretty common.
Yeah.
It's like, can we tune this just a little bit more? It's a little bit too natural. And that's the thing too. It's like, you can keep, again, you've already brought it up, but with Melodyne, with Autotune, with other tools, you can keep it sounding natural. Like you can tweak the settings, but it's not about keeping it natural. It's about making it not distracting.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. It's about keeping it not distracting. A bad mix is a distracting mix.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I cannot get over it. The only time I've ever had someone say that, like, can you keep it more natural, like tune it less, is people that, and again, I'm like being really mean just to prove a point. People that went nowhere were going nowhere, and it was helping me none at all.
Yeah, I think it's like a similar thing to like just getting mixed revisions and stuff. Like at the very beginning, people usually don't know what they want, or they think they know what they want. And so you will just get like random things like that. But it does seem like the more experience and the more like higher caliber of artists you work with, it's not, they won't request those things anymore.
I will put into perspective Ariana Grande, who is a fantastic singer. Mariah Carey, who is an amazing singer, still both use tuning.
Yeah.
And if they use tuning, you better fucking use tuning, because you're not even close to Ariana Grande. Not even close, I guarantee it. I don't even give a shit. Genre, it doesn't matter. It's also often like with rap music is especially dangerous, because like right now, I mean, it has been for a while, but like with trap, there's a lot of like singing rapping.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you right now, there's a few songs that are popular that did well, where it's like you heard the producer say that they put the autotune in the wrong key and that's what worked for the song. That is so uncommon and such a exception. You don't do that. Don't do that. I'm not saying that you need to go to school and learn theory, but oh my gosh, I'm so passionate about this because I think it ruins songs. It's like the lowest hanging fruit. This is like the most basic thing that everybody could be doing.
Yeah.
It's not difficult. I don't think everybody has the same ability, but it's not difficult to find to do it yourself or to find someone to do it or to set your up. If anybody's learned anything from listening to this podcast, it's that I don't like putting up barriers to make people feel more insecure. Like I'm not in the business of making people feel insecure. I'm here to provide tools and to provide understanding to help you feel more accomplished, more assertive, to feel more ready to handle what's ahead of you.
Yeah.
Vocal tuning and me calling you lazy is like the one exception. I hope you feel insecure. Like, feel so insecure that you're gonna spend 3 hours tuning your vocals. That is the bare minimum. Like, this is the one thing that I hope if too many of y'all are not insecure enough about that. It really is such a waste. Such a waste.
Yeah.
Such a waste.
It makes a difference. It definitely does.
Yeah, because like the songs are good.
Yeah.
And then I show my sister, who's like not in the music industry, and she's like, "Why are the vocals out of tune?" I show my wife, she's like, "Why are the vocals out of tune?"
Yeah.
Like they can't even listen to the song.
Yeah.
They're like, "Whoa, this is obviously an amateur." It's like the fastest way to find out if someone's an amateur.
And I feel like even people without like amazing pitch, it's usually just like you can just tell something's off, and they can't put their finger on it, and that's a lot of times the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can't put their finger on it. They can tell something's off.
Yeah. It's just like, this doesn't sound professional. And then that's usually what it is.
I don't give a shit how well you dial in that drum kit. Vocals are out of tune. It sucks. The song sucks. All right. I'm trying to think of an example where like, it's okay to leave it out of tune.
There's like very specific, like, but it's like intentional, like a thing. Like sometimes an artist will go between notes to get like a special sound. But again, that's more of an intentional. That's not like a bad.
So accidentals?
Yeah, accidentals.
No, you still tune to the center of that accidental pitch.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's a very specific song.
Microtonal? Like it's like more like Indo-Persian, Middle East, Indian, where it's like microtones, where it's more than just the 12 semitones. Yeah, that, sure. We can also go into vibratos. Vibratos, sometimes if they're perfectly centered and they're equally go up and down, it can sound a little off.
Yeah.
But that just takes a good ear. Yeah, I can't think of a single example.
There's one I remember I like watched a video where they were talking about why they did it, but I don't remember the song at all. So yeah. That's such a rare exception.
So rare.
Yeah.
Rarely ever. If you think, is this song the exception? I'm going to tell you right now, no. It's not. It's not the exception. If you had to think about it, it's not the exception. All right.
That makes sense.
I think that's it for this episode. Sorry, I got the linear phase in the vocal tuning.
It's heated.
It makes me. It's just so. I'll say it. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. All right. That's okay. Whatever. Make good music. I want y'all to make good music.
Yeah.
I want y'all to do your best. I'm sick and tired of hearing really good songs just like not being given the chance by the general public, and they get like 12 streams because like the first note was out of tune.
Yeah.
It's like, what a waste. That song was so good.
Yeah.
It was such a good. The song was so good. Oh, the first note was off. Nothing. 12 streams, 13 streams.
Yeah.
2 monthly listeners.
Yeah, a little, yeah.
Or it's like 200 monthly listeners, and then the next month is 2. You know, you'll lose all of them because they listened to it once and realize, oh yeah, that was shit. And then oh man, so sad. What a waste.
Yeah, and again, to emphasize, it doesn't have to be, when you pitch it, it doesn't have to be like a perfect like snap and then you'll like do that thing that lowers the waves or whatever, but like you do still want it to be pitched.
I will continue to use the word perfect. I think it does need to be perfect, but I think perfect is subjective.
But yeah, only Jesus is perfect.
Okay, shut up. All right.
Does DK disagree with me on the internet?
All right. Okay. That's it for this episode. James, any thoughts? Any other thoughts? Do you have closing remarks?
Closing remarks.
Closing thoughts?
I think everything that we talked about is something that people could apply and do. So I think find something that we talked about today on this list and find out a way to be better at that. Because I think these are pretty important things to work on.
Yeah. These are huge misconceptions, and there's a lot of nuance to all these things. So just be open-minded.
Yeah.
And try things. If you think that I'm wrong, that's awesome. That means you thought about it and gave my idea a chance, and you discovered that it's not working.
Yeah.
Except for vocals. You're fucking wrong if you like vocals out of tune. You're just wrong. Okay. On that note, thank you so much for listening. If you are interested in listening to more episodes of the Mixing Music Podcast, more technical, shorter, easier to digest episode with homework assignments given at the end of them, go check out mixingmusicpodcast.com/exclusive, where you get access to 3 times the amount of episodes, 2 extra episodes every single week.
You get to hear me more.
Yeah, 2 extra episodes every single week, talking about technical tips on how to improve your mixes, masterings, productions, everything, all that jazz.
Yeah.
So mixingmusicpodcast.com/exclusive. Thank you again to our sponsors. Go to mixingmusicpodcast.com to find out. Get discounts on Sweetwater, Plugin Boutique, FilePass, Canva, and many other offerings that we have from all of our sponsors. Thank you to our sponsors, including Loudon Audio as well. Appreciate y'all. On that note, happy mixing, my friends, and stay saucy.